Hey friends, welcome to day 5 of our Ruth study. Today we are diving into Ruth chapter 3. I hope that you've been liking it so far, and I hope that today you really are able to get something out of it. I know it's like a historical story, but I still get tons of things out of this that I can apply to my life, and I hope that you do too. So we're going to start off with our 5 and 5 questions, and then we'll jump in a little bit deeper into the reading. The first question is, what do Naomi's instructions to Ruth in verse 3 tell us about the heart of both man and woman? So I'll read verse 3. It says, "Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he is finished eating and drinking." So again, what do these instructions to Ruth tell us about the heart of both men and women? The second question is, in verse 4, Naomi tells Ruth that he will tell you what to do. She's referring to Boaz. So she tells him, then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do. What do we see about the fate of Ruth and Naomi from this phrase? Ruth responds to Naomi in verses 5 and 6. They say, "I will do whatever you say," Ruth answered. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. What can we learn about listening to wise counsel from this response? The next question is, who is someone in your life that you can definitely trust for good advice and counsel? And the last question is, how does Ruth respond to Boaz in verse 9? Describe it in 3 words. And she says, "I am your servant Ruth. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family." So describe her response in 3 words. That was 5 and 5, y'all. We are moving into our scriptures, just diving a little bit deeper now. Okay, y'all, so we are in Ruth 3 today, and the first thing starting off is in verse 1, Naomi tells Ruth, "My daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for." In the New King James version of the Bible, the word used is security, and then it also calls it rest. So again, remember that's what Naomi wished for her daughters-in-law, or her daughter-in-laws before they left Moab, and here we see that she is doing everything she can to provide that for Ruth because Ruth has been so good to her. So I thought that was really sweet. In verse 2, we see the word winnowing. Naomi's talking to Ruth and she says, "Now Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor." I didn't know what winnowing is, so I looked it up, and it's just extracting grain from its surrounding husk. So that's what Boaz was doing. He was extracting grain there. Moving on to verse 3. I think it's very interesting that Naomi tells Ruth to basically look her best. Exactly what she says is, "Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking." The New King James Version uses the word "anoint yourself." So I think it's interesting that Naomi essentially, tells Ruth, hey, look good, feel good, then go. And I think that, I can totally relate to that. I don't even like to leave my house unless I'm feeling like I look presentable, and let alone go to this man that I may or may not know that well and essentially propose to him. So I definitely think that shows, that women do feel better when we feel like we look pretty and are feeling good in our skin. So I just think that that's something that we can take away. It's even in the Bible here. And then I also think that it does show a little bit about men's heart, because Naomi wants Ruth to look pretty and be feeling her best and feeling confident and beautiful when she goes to Boaz, and that is something that men appreciate. And so it's just how we're wired. There's a really good book called Captivating, and then that's about the women's heart, and then I haven't read Wild at Heart. That's the one about the men's heart, but captivating just talks a lot about our hearts and like how we're wired, and that's one of the things that it talks about is beauty. So I just really thought that was interesting that we see that even here, and that Naomi, who is so wise and giving Ruth all this wise counsel, is the one that tells her to do that. It's not Ruth being like, yeah, I'll go, but let me freshen up real quick. It's Naomi telling her like, hey, no, look good, feel good when you go here and do this. So I appreciated that. And then in verse 4, we see that Naomi says, okay, so she tells Ruth to go lie down and uncover his feet. And then she says, he will tell you what to do. And in my Bible, I wrote like, they're both kind of like leaving everything in Boaz's hands after that. And to me, that just shows that they must have really, Naomi especially, must have really trusted his character to just put it all out there and put it in his hands. And I mean, essentially they're putting it into God's hands and laying everything on the line, but they had to wait for Boaz to be like yay or nay before they had an answer. And moving on to verses 5 and 6, we again see Ruth's trust and obedience to Naomi. So she says, I will do whatever you say. And then it says she goes down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. So she totally and completely 100% trusts Naomi. And I just think that it's so beautiful that she has this, wise older woman that she can look up to and really, really trust her counsel and 100% like be confident in what she says, knowing that Naomi has her best interest at heart. Verse 7, I just think it's really cute how it says that Ruth approached quietly. Some other translations that I read use the word softly. And to me, again, that's accentuating Ruth's femininity. I think I said that right. Femininity here, and just showing that she was graceful and gentle and, womanly when she goes to uncover Boaz's feet. I just, again, something that I really appreciated. The girly girl in me during this is like, ah. And then in verse 10, okay, I'm going to read you this quote. One of the suggested readings that I gave for the Ruth is Giddy Up Eunice. This book is really great. I'm going to tell you, it's very conversational. So I just wanted to read one part. She's talking about women here, but in verse 10 is where we really see the vulnerability of Ruth. And she has been vulnerable with Naomi up to this point by trusting her, especially here. So she is like 100% trusting Naomi, being vulnerable, and then she's vulnerable with Boaz. So I just thought this quote from the book, it's talking about opening up and, sharing our lives with each other, and it's referring to women, but I think here we see that Ruth is being vulnerable to Naomi in the sense that she's listening to her and doing what she says. And the book says, if we don't open up, we can rest assured that we'll miss out on other women's wisdom and perspective. We might even walk around with a bunch of burdens we shouldn't be trying to carry alone. We might compare ourselves straight into isolation and loneliness. So I just thought that was really kind of a really good description of what Ruth and Naomi had and what we don't want to miss out on. Because again, like I said, Ruth is being very vulnerable with Naomi by listening to her, and she's also being super vulnerable with Boaz. And I'm not going to ruin it here because this is where we're stopping for the night. Boaz says, who are you? And Ruth says, I am your servant. So she humbles herself, and then she says, spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family. And here, she is just absolutely basically marriage proposing to him right there. That was the custom of the time. So she's saying, hey, I am willing to marry you, and I want to marry you, is what she's telling Boaz. So the girl in all of us, I think, is probably like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? But Ruth's vulnerability opens the door for something so, so beautiful, and we're going to look at that tomorrow. So I think that that's a really valuable lesson that we can take from today. Ruth is so vulnerable with both Naomi and Boaz, and I think in today's day and age, we're taught to be such strong women and this and that, and I think that sometimes that causes us to not be vulnerable, and who knows what we're missing out on because of that, kind of like what the book says. So that being said, these are very safe places that Ruth is being vulnerable, and I think you gotta know like when it's safe for you to really open up and be vulnerable like that. But I do think that society today makes us scared to be that vulnerable with each other and with, men in our lives. That was one of the ways that I felt so at peace with my relationship with my husband, is that I felt able to be vulnerable and womanly and all that kind of stuff, and I didn't feel like I needed to be ashamed of it. I felt like he appreciated it, and I felt like it made him more masculine and more manly. So, and again, I'm not going to ruin Ruth. We're going to look at Boaz's response tomorrow, but lesson is Ruth's vulnerability here opens the door for beautiful, beautiful things. And like I said, we are going to look at those tomorrow. I hope that y'all have a great day. I would love to see you over in the Facebook group, and I hope that today blessed you in some way, shape, or form. Bye.